So I'm again in Blender, and next I'm going to do shift A, not shift A. Actually, I'm going to go in video editing. Next, I'm going to do shift A image. No need to learn this. I'm just going and showing you something. So Python Blender, this 3333 came over here. So now when I'm selecting this, and then I'm adding a image strip. You can particularly see that this whole image has been created, this whole animations. Now you might be wondering that the specific wondering is that, so when I'm doing animation, that time the animation was actually not getting stored in any place until and unless I have set up a location in Blender, means in the output properties, and that time only it's shown. So let me come back to the topic over here. So output is for that reason. Now override threshold file extent catch result, I will teach you this later. Now first let me come over here. PNG. Over here you can see PMP, EDs, PNG, JPEG, JPEG 2000, Targa RAW, Xenon, DPX, and etc. etc. This is actually used for the extension of the how the output will be saved. Now, when I'm doing animation, I can directly do MPEG. But when I'm doing MPEG, that time if my animation sometimes crashes due to my over GPU power, or suppose most of you may not have GPU, but suppose power run off. So if any emergency happens or computer suddenly crashed for some reason, that time this whole video will be deleted. Hence, it's better to save it in PNG and then converting it into image to video. So once this part is done, let me come back to Bake. Now, Bake actually has one very means very important effect on Blender. Bake is actually used to convert complex and dynamic data. Now, what do you understand by dynamic data? Suppose you can see in physics tab, this actually suppose you can see over in the physics tab that there is some of the physics force field, collision, cloth, dynamic paint, and etc. Now, to give effect to physics tab like dynamic data, we have or lightning or procedural meter, we into static pre-calculated data like image texture or catches, that time we use baking. Baking actually improves the performance and ensure consistency and enable compatibility, means compatibility with other software like game engines. Now you might be wondering that ensure consistency, because generally when you're not using your bake in Blender, that time your some it might have a chance that your it is inconsistent. Actually you are not understand, you might not have understood the some of the words, but when I'm doing really when I will do the project based learning, I am going to explain you with practically. But and that is the main thing. So that time we use bake generally to for converting the dynamic data to static pre-calculated data. We generally use this bake. So freestyle, I'm not going to come over here, and that part is done. So let me come over here. Render layer. Render layer, I'm not going to do very much, but I'm going to teach you these parts. These are different layers as I taught you over here. These layers are only the layers which I said these layers are only these layers. So that's it. So it's now let me this there's nothing extra to do over here. This is therefore called render layer because it works with the because it works for the rendering of the layers. Anyways, so now let us come to the scene. scene also actually has one of the good effect, means important criteria for this, because scene actually used for setting up camera background active clip. The camera, see, now currently I'm having one camera, hence I can render the scene of one camera only. Suppose I'm having camera over here, suppose I'm duplicating the cameras, suppose over here, so hence I have having two cameras. When I'm duplicating so many cameras for differing achieving different scenes, that time I can set up the which camera it has to render, because I said that Blender renders the camera, but which camera the Blender will render, you can decide from this scene option, camera 1 or camera 2 or camera 3, you can decide from over here. And one more, you can notice that suppose I'm selecting camera 3, that time this camera is getting one black, but other camera is not getting these things. These small criteria are actually not shown by many YouTubers, Miss Blender teachers, but I'm going to show you each and every small note changes. So currently you can understand by over here the camera, particular camera 3 is going to be rendered. Now if I switch to camera 6 is currently over here, so I can understand the camera 6 is going to render. This camera 6, how I will understand by seeing this camera 6. So whichever camera the rendering will happen, that camera gets this triangular black. Now units over here, units is another important part. Now suppose in our day-to-day life we use many units like kilometers, centimeters, inch, foots, and pixel we can also use. And there are millimeters, miles, hectares, meters, I mean kilometers, inches, feet, centimeter, and so many units are there. We would almost everything. Generally we use feet and inches. For that reason, for particularly that reason, to understand which feet, or actually these are used specifically used for 3D printers, for understand how much inch would it be, how much means centimeter, so I'm doing centimeter over here. So this whole is in calculated in centimeters, and hence according to that the grid increased. Now I'm doing it inches. So as per that the inches set up. Now meters, as per that meters is set up. In general, it is generally calculated in meters only. And if I do kilometers, it is very large. Now you're thinking that it is in heaven, but it is not in heaven because the grid is currently over here. Anyways, in general, Blender actually uses meters. Length can be metric or imperial. Suppose when we are doing imperial, it is becoming this, and when we are doing metric, the grid is actually increasing. And degrees, you can radians. Actually, there are two types of degrees in which it's measured. Generally, Blender uses degrees to measure it, and unit scale you can use separate scale, and that's it. I'm not going to go so far in units. Color management, render flea martin, you can raw, and you can select as per that. Audio, you can increase or speed, how speed the audio will be. The 343 means the speed the audio can travel in the sound, if you know a little bit about the sound, the speed. So this is the thing. And Doppler, I'm not going to go so far. And this gravity also, gravity enhanced or not, and I'm not going to go so far. Digit body simplify, custom property, I'm not going to go far. But in custom property, I'm going to say you can definitely add some of the properties over here, because some properties maybe you want for yourself but may not be over here. But since I'm not going to add any custom property, I'm not going to gonna do so over here, but I'm going to definitely teach for custom property in later videos. Now let's come to this part. Over here, this is actually render how the world will look and nothing else. Ambient could say invert lighting, indirect lighting, gather, mist, again custom property and nothing else to. Now camera is another important feature. In camera you can see that there is look where the camera is located, where the rotation will happen, how scale it is. You can use camera over here. So camera, you actually know about this, and you can set up how the camera will rotate as per this axis. And delta transform, and delta means I think this one delta transform. these deltas. Anyways, it is also not used. I'm not going to use this one. And transform locks relations, I'm not going to groups, and I'm not going to go so much far. So now let us come to add object constraint. Actually, I need to select this one first here. And now another thing, since I was selecting camera, it was only showing the properties over this camera. Since I'm selecting this one, it is also showing properties about this one. Now, since in camera there is nothing more to show, and in cube also there is same thing, that how location will happen, how rotation will happen, how scale will happen. Delta transformation is the same, how much it will form, transform relation, groups, and display, and nothing duplication. If any duplication happens, and nothing else. Okay, so now let us come on object constraint and modifier. At first, let us come to object constraint. Object constraints are actually generally actually object constraints are used to automatically control an object's location, rotation, and scale by linking it to another object or target. The target, actually, I said you what is target before. Suppose, for example, you want an eye to be moved. They suppose this is an eye. Consider this is an eye. This might not be an eye. Means actually this is not an eye, but consider this as an eye. So actually you want the eye to rotate in this that direction. So how you can do it, that you can simply you have to place this rotation, you have to use rigging, you have to use a lot of things. Means suppose rigging, and with bone, if you want to do rotation by manually, you can also do that. But to make it more easier, we actually use add object constraint, through which, and I'm going to do some separate videos about this object constraints. I'm going to do each and every separate video about this object constraint, because object constraint is one of the is most important feature which makes the complex processes much easier. Now let me come to modifiers. Now modifiers is also one of the most important function in Blender. I'm also going to go over the whole modifier section in one video. Now modifier actually has a lot of important functions. At first, suppose you don't want this cube to turn into waves. Now it might be a little bit surprising for you that how this object. Now let me enlarge this object this much. So how can this object turn into one wave? This actually can happen. Suppose I'm doing fluid simulation. Not fluid simulation, let me do it. Or suppose, before I think I need to do physics steps, so I'm not going over here. So first, for easier method, let me give you this bevel. Now beveling actually is transforming this object. Very carefully see that the object size and vertices are located over here, but these vertices are modified into this one, but the actual vertices are over here. This part will not go until and unless you apply this bevel. Suppose I'm applying this bevel, sorry, it's in edit mode. So suppose I'm applying this bevel and this is applied. Now if I go to edit mode, it will not show that vertices. So this is the thing, modifiers is actually modifying the object more. Now you can even use for subdivision. As I was saying in the project based learning, that it could be more easy if I would can do modifiers, because modifiers one of the my best thing I like over here. So I said that if it would be nice if I do modifiers. See, as I modify more, the real vertices were over here, but since I'm modifying more, it is turning into this. This is also a very important portion in Blender. And once modified, and to modify an actual object mesh, and that's suppose now I'm going to object mode, and then I'm applying it, and that's it. It turned into this, a simple cube. Now let me go over here. This part is nothing more to teach. Now come materials. Materials actually it sets the color of an object, how the object will. Now you might be changing the color as per this, but you can see So I'm changing it over here and it turned green. Now if I render it, you can go to render over here also. There's nothing. Since the camera is not over here, so if I now enlarge this, bring back this, suppose let me shorten this object right till over here, then I am zero viewing it, means I mean zero viewing it, it's coming. Now if I do renders, this no objects, you actually see no objects. There is actually a reason for this. To set a color, you are not supposed to set the color from over here. Anyways, so suppose you're not saying color over here. So to set color perfectly, you have to do cycles render. Now there's a little bit difference between cycles render and blender render. So the main difference of color setup in circles render and blender render is, now the main difference which I was saying is actually the blend cycles render. Actually it makes accurate, physically accurate, um, means light, that part of it. Or photorealism means actually it makes it more realistic, while blender render is actually now currently it's called ev, like that something, in the recent version. Now that is actually used for speed and non-photorealistic. Now non-photorealistic means actually it's for just for animation, but it will not be looking as realistic as we want. Hence we actually generally tries to use blender cycle. Now actually, now if you run blender's render, you can definitely run very easily blender cycle. Blender cycle and blender render has not so much difference in between. Now if we, and there you can surface and you can see specular, over and lambent, and but if you go to blender cycle over here, you can see I'm going to say materials, diffuse color. Diffuse color, you can change diffuse over here, diffuse and diffuse color. So that is the thing, that is the difference between it. You can use nodes. Nodes means suppose I'm doing velvet, I'm doing here, actually suppose anti-scope, and there is a little bit color difference as you can see. Now I'm doing glass, not over here, blender, see glass. Suppose I'm doing emission, it will emit lights. Suppose I'm doing uh, background, it will catch the background color. And this, that's it for it. There's nothing more to say, and you can adjust the strength even. But cycles render we are currently not doing. So blender render and cycles render we will currently do when we will learn the nodes. Now over here you can see texture. Texture is actually one of the most important means part. See over here wood. The steppings will be as per wood. Now currently there is no object. Since I am using texture which is not used with this and this, since it is interpreting with it. In your texture is actually used for wood, colorings and marble, glassy, and it is usually used for giving one of the more realistic ones. And I'm going to do texture in next video as I said you. Now particles. Particle is one of the most important, means specifically when you are doing a human character. Suppose you want to do one magical stick, that time you can see some of the particles are getting emitted. Particles are actually not meshes. That particles are actually not meshes. They are particles, and you can even see that in any character that here. Here is actually not the mesh. You can even create here with the meshes, but generally do not prefer it to do. We generally use real hair. That is particle system emitter. You can use here. This is here. This might be looking a little bit scary, but that is it. You can even shape it out, but I'm going to not go so much in details, and I'm going to um, remove it. And physics, you can use many things. Domain C, as I was saying, fluid and that one. So that time you can actually adjust the fluid constant, or you can even use the this where it gone, Yes, this smoke one as per the your use. Dorman, flow, you can use as per them. Means how the smoke will flow, smoke flames, what smell means what flames it will produce. And I'm going to go in details about next video as I'm saying. And that's it for I think today's overview. And this property tab is one of the most important tab in blender. And to continue with blender modeling and to create very nice fantastic animations, I prefer you to learn properties tab more easily. And now it's up to you, you test it up, you test different options. And once you watch this complete video, and once I'm ending, and once you reverse this video, you can understand and try it practically. After that, you try it yourself, then you will understand how much you can learn. After I have completed this, you will try it to yourself, and then you can improve it more. So I hope